So I had sat there for probably about a couple of hours, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this rock gets thrown at me and hits the ground. Big, good size rock. I mean, pretty good size.
Welcome to the Local Insider podcast with our guest, Allen Wallace. Together with his wife, Jeneen, he founded Off The Chain Paranormal. In today's Christmas Bigfoot episode, Allen will share his expertise and insights on this mysterious creature and how it has captured people's imaginations worldwide. So join us as we delve into the world of Bigfoot and all things paranormal with Allen Wallace. It's sure to be a festive and intriguing episode, so sit back, relax, and let's get off the chain with Allen Wallace.
The Local Insider Show is brought to you in part by My Patriot Supply. You don't need to live in the heart of a hurricane zone or along an active fault line to be serious about emergency preparedness. If we've learned anything from both historical and recent events, crises can come in all shapes and sizes, and they can come at any time, even overnight. Whether you're experiencing the effects of long-term illness, an accident, job loss, or even widespread threats like terrorist attacks, economic collapse, or an outbreak of disease, you can tackle what's next in confidence with My Patriot Supply storable foods. No matter what your emergency may look like, you won't have to worry about where you're getting your next meal. And as far as your survival is concerned, there's nothing more important than that. Already our foods and packaging undergo regular, rigorous testing to ensure they exceed industry standards for safety, quality, and shelf life. Ready Hour also conducts regular analytical, microbial, and oxygen level inspections, as well as sensory testing of raw materials and finished goods in a food testing lab. Don't delay, prepare today. When an emergency is on the way, My Patriot Supply receives a rush of orders that slows their ability to ship as quickly as usual from their warehouses across the country. Go to localinsidershow.com/emergency food to order your 2-week or 4-week supply of storable food.
Welcome to the Local Insider Podcast, a show about everyday people who make a big difference.
Allen Wallace, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for having me.
You bet. I first heard about you guys from I say you guys, you're the founding member, one of the founders. You and your wife founded the project, right?
Yes, sir. Me and my wife, Jeneen. Yes, sir.
Of Off The Chain Paranormal?
Yes, sir. Yeah, we founded it in 2012, actually.
2012.
Yes, sir. It just occurred to me the other day that this is actually our 10th anniversary.
Oh, wow.
So this is where we've been together as a team for about 10 years.
That is great. 10 years, and hopefully many, many more to come.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
So what, I know you're former military, is that correct?
Yes, sir. I was in the Navy for 4 years, from 1985 to 1989.
85 to 89, and were you on a ship or a submarine, or?
I was, yes, sir. After getting out of boot camp, I was stationed on the USS Iwo Jima for about 2.5 years, and then while I was on there, I accidentally broke my ankle, and so they took me off the ship. The ship was actually about to go on a med cruise, and so since I had a broken ankle, I was not. They didn't think I needed to go on that med cruise, which I agreed with them, and so they put me in on a duty station, land duty station, and my ankle was in a cast and everything, and I was on crutches, so they made me the mail runner. So that's the military for you. You know, if a plane flies upside down and backwards, that's military. But they made me the mail runner, and so I did all the mail running on crutches with a foot in a cast. But it was a good time. And then after that, after I did about 1 year there with my ankle healing up, then I was at Beachmaster Unit 2 for the last year I was in, and there I was all in Norfolk, Virginia, and that was the Beachmaster Unit 2 Little Creek Amphibious Base for the last year, and that's where all the SEAL teams was, so it was interesting being around those guys.
Oh, I bet. So what sparked your interest to start a paranormal research group? How did you come up with that idea?
Well, actually, I guess myself, as everybody, as you go through your years in life, you have things that come up that you just can't explain, that you can't, that always kind of, and I'm talking about, unexplained things, paranormal things happen to you as years go by. And I've always been fascinated in this kind of thing anyway. Anytime a documentary would come on television or anything like that, I was always, first to watch it. And somewhere around 2008, one of the things on my bucket list was, and it still was to write a book. And so I decided I was going to write a book on the paranormal originally. Mm-hmm. And so I reached out to some paranormal teams, and I had gotten with one in Memphis. I don't think they're together anymore, but I had gotten with a group in Memphis, and I was just going to do some research. And on my very first night with them, we went to an old, which was it was an old cabin type style. It was a old plantation area there in Memphis, and so we got there, in a very beautiful place, and it was one of those old mansions where when you take one step on the floorboards, the whole place creaks. Mm-hmm. But it was a small team, and everyone was accounted for, and we were inside the cabin, sitting down on the first floor in the dining room. And actually, this was my very first paranormal investigation I've ever been on. This was in 2008. And the cabin was locked up, and everybody was accounted for. We're all sitting around the dining room table there on the lower level. And as we're sitting, and nobody was upstairs, nobody whatsoever. And all of a sudden, we started hearing footsteps going back and forth upstairs. And from that moment, I was hooked. I was like, oh my goodness, this is, I was always fascinated with the paranormal. You have things happen in your life that are paranormal related that you can't really put your finger on. But then that was the first time that, I was like, I had searched out the paranormal, and it was there. And so shortly thereafter, my wife and I, we went ahead and formed, it took a little while, but we formed Off The Chain Paranormal in 2012. And, we had a few personnel changes here and there, but right now we have a great solid team, just incredible, got a group of people. And we've investigated quite a bit. I mean, everything, old theaters, museums. We've been to Little Rock quite a few times. We've investigated the MacArthur Museum up there, where they have all that stuff there. Mm-hmm. And we've investigated the old State House, quite a few places. Residential places also. I mean, we have people that reach out to us from time to time, and private residences, and they want us to come in and investigate their place. And so, but anywhere from old museums to theaters to private residences, you name it, we've probably been there. Even cemeteries, places like that.
So, what are some of the deciding factors that you use if, let's say, I thought my home was haunted and I wanted you guys to come check it out? How would you decide to say, yeah, that sounds like a good case, we'll come check it out for you?
Yeah, so the first thing we'll do is it's like if you reached out to us, we contact you and get with you either by telephone or in person. And we'd ask you, some questions, a series of questions, and we ask this to everybody. Have you dabbled in the occult? Have you been playing with a Ouija board? Do you partake in alcohol or drugs, or, try to rule out all those type of factors, mm-hmm. And then usually, like everybody will always be honest and forthright with us and tell us, well, I haven't played with a Ouija board, or no, I'm not into the occult. And once we get through those factors, then we can usually go into the home and take a look around. And usually the first thing we'll do when we get there, we have a device that we use that electromagnetic field detector that we use to go ahead and determine where the highest percentage of electricity transports was usually like because their breaker box or somewhere like that, and that way we'll know because they're very sensitive to high electrical activity, and so we try to pinpoint that, and then kind of go from there, and let them tell us what they've experienced in their home, what they've seen, what's that kind of thing, and then try to go from that angle.
Sure. So would if they were, let's say, dabbling in the occult or using Ouija boards or tarot cards or automatic writing, stuff like that, would that disqualify them for an investigation, or is that just is that a preliminary question that you asked to see if kind of what type of entity you would be dealing with?
Probably a little of both. If we find someone that is definitely involved in the occult and uses this as a practice, we will probably just avoid that altogether. We definitely don't want to get into that field. But if they say, "Oh, well, we 6 months ago, for fun one night, we sat around and we had a seance and we played with a Ouija board, but now everything's kind of backfired on us and we're kind of everything's kind of heated up here," then we'll kind of come in and definitely discourage them from doing that sort of thing, in the future, because that is definitely can be. I mean, a Ouija board is really probably in my own personal opinion, one of the biggest no-nos of anybody could ever do, because it can open a door and that you can't shut. In my research on the actual Exorcist case, which the movie was based on, that's how that all started. It was actually a young boy, not a girl, in the actual Exorcist case, and he and his aunt dabbled with a Ouija board, and that's how the whole thing started.
That was in St. Louis, right?
Yes, sir.
I am friends with a man that he used to work at the hospital where it was I guess a Catholic hospital.
Oh yeah,
where that boy was taken, and
oh wow,
yeah, he told me a little bit about that, and I probably wouldn't have taken the job.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that case there is a very spook. Well, that's probably one of the questions we get. One of the questions we get asked the most: Have you ever investigated the Exorcist house, or ever would you? And my answer to that is no, we haven't, and no, we never will. I would never. That's one of those cases that I think is just every paranormal investigator probably should stay away from.
I agree. Chase Hayden, I don't know why I hope I didn't call him Caleb during the show. But Chase Hayden, yeah, I had Chase on from your team, and I got to tell you, it was not what I expected. I'll just say that I was skeptical, and then you can tell that there's really you guys have a quality of, what's the word I'm looking for? Integrity.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, the methods you use and the way you do your investigations are from a skeptic point of view. You try to rule things out. You're not trying to prove your own assumption. You're trying to find what the truth is, and that's.
Oh yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That's very admirable.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, we try to achieve great strides in that area. We really do, because there's so much. I mean, today's society, with the technology we have, there's so much fakery out there and people faking stuff, and we try our very, very best on each investigation. And we have multiple files that I keep on computer, our evidence files that we've collected over the years. And if we have any doubt, our saying here with the Off The Chain Paranormal is, when in doubt, throw it out. So if there's any doubt on it, we get into something that raises an eyebrow, but if there's any doubt to it, if there's like, well, this could have been this or it could have been that, we just throw it out. But even with that said, we still have quite a bit in our evidence files that we've never been able to debunk whatsoever.
So I understand with investigating the paranormal, you probably get calls or may accidentally run onto a case that you would need to investigate that would involve the notorious Sasquatch or Bigfoot. Is that true?
Yes, sir. Actually, we have one right now, and because of the weather and different things, we haven't been able to get down there. But we have that is definitely an area that we want to get into. That definitely throw our hat into the ring on that. I have ever since I was a boy, been fascinated with the paranormal. The Sasquatch has also been right there with it. I've watched every documentary that I could possibly watch. Some of them are laughable, and I just I've been ashamed of myself for actually watching them. But then there are some documentaries out there, and that I have watched, and I get on YouTube quite a bit and watch quite a bit of there. They have a pretty good community on YouTube of Bigfoot investigators, and I'm very very selective on who I watch even on that. But I think we've gotten to the point now that it just can't be ignored. I mean, there is a multiple amount of people, and I'm not saying that everyone who comes forward and says, I saw a Bigfoot, is seeing a Bigfoot. I do not believe that whatsoever.
Mm-hmm. So do you believe the Patterson-Gimlin video is authentic?
Absolutely. Yes, sir. And I'll tell you why I believe that. I have spoken to Dr. Jeff Meldrum, who I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but he has been on many Bigfoot documentaries, only the very serious ones. Mm-hmm. And he is the director of anthropology at the University of Idaho. And he has devoted almost all of his life to the research of Bigfoot. And I've spoken to him actually personally on the Patterson-Gimlin footage. And as he, like I said, he's a director of anthropology. He knows the way humans walk. He knows the way, and I'm not saying Sasquatch is a primate, but he has primate characteristics. I don't know exactly what it is. I believe he's definitely a bipedal creature. I believe he's his own species, but I believe he does tend to have some characteristics of what a primate would do. Mm-hmm. That said, Dr. Meldrum has examined. He's probably the man who's examined the Patterson-Gimlin footage more than anybody, and he's been on documentaries concerning the Patterson-Gimlin footage. And I've spoken to him, and he's actually talked to Hollywood experts. I mean, Hollywood special effects experts that worked in Hollywood during the late 60s and early 70s. And they examined the Patterson-Gimlin footage. I mean, these are the men who worked for Paramount and Universal and all the big movie companies.
Right.
And they've actually sat and looked at the Patterson-Gimlin footage, and they said themselves, with all the money in the world, that they couldn't come close to that costume. Not even close. That they said if it was a fake, that it would have to been the ultimate fake put on mankind, because for one thing, you could actually see the muscle groups coming through as the creature would walk. Mm-hmm. Number two, one of the special effects men told Mr. Meldrum that you could see the fur stretch, and they did not have stretchable fur in 1967. I did not know that, but they said with all the money in the world, they couldn't even come close with that. And of course, Dr. Jeff Meldrum has sat and actually freeze-framed and looked at this in slow motion and frozen the frames and showing where the muscle groups actually come through, where you can, with each step, you can actually see this muscle or that muscle. And then he also has plaster cast prints taken at that site in his possession, and it shows a metatarsal break. And the metatarsal break is only indicative to primates. Humans can't do it. It's when they step, there's like a gap or a break into the foot there. And when they did the plaster cast and he examined them, it had epidural ridges on the bottom of the foot, which is only characteristic of primates. Humans don't have them. Mm-hmm. And he said nobody, even if it was faked, nobody would even have thought or even could have been able to do that. They wouldn't even have been able to fake it. So there's more pros to the Patterson-Gimlin footage being authentic than there are the cons against it. By far. And, we still get, if you turn on YouTube or television, you'll still get people's cell phones where they'll say, they caught Bigfoot footage. Mm-hmm. But, and if you've been in this field for very long, or you've been a researcher, you can pretty much spot the fakes from the original. But to me personally, that's probably the smoking gun. I mean, that's the Roswell of Sasquatch film footage. It was taken well over 50 years ago, and I don't think we've come even close today to match that. And I'm not saying that all the film footage that comes forward today isn't a Sasquatch, but I'd say the biggest majority of it is very skeptical, especially with today with the technology we have and how easily it can be faked. And of course, they got now today, in 2022, they would have the technology for better costumes today than they would in '67. So
Right.
But I definitely believe if Bigfoot was ever filmed, I believe that to be a genuine film. Yes, sir.
What are your thoughts on the idea of Sasquatch being some characteristics of a multi-dimensional or alien or something like that, a being of some sort?
Well, yes, sir. That can't be ignored either. I don't have a dog in that hunt. I've been asked that question many times by other people. Do I think that Bigfoot does have any paranormal characteristics? I think it's very possible. Some of the Bigfoot researchers that I do know have used electromagnetic field detectors in their research in the middle of the woods, nowhere where there's no electrical wires or no around. And these things when they would start to have activity, what they called Sasquatch activity, like rock throwing, or they would hear vocalizations, or they would have wood knocks coming at them, then this thing would go crazy. And there's really no explanation why just a few minutes before you start having, Sasquatch activity, these things would start going off. I mean, but then on the other hand, here you have a creature that's supposedly anywhere from 7 to 8, 9, 10 foot, can weigh anywhere from 450 to 650 pounds. That is the world's ultimate hide and go seek champion. I'm not saying, it's very odd. I mean, they could teach the Navy SEALs some stealth, Now I've hunted my entire life. I've never seen one, but I did have an experience years and years ago that I wouldn't say it's haunted me, but I've had an experience, younger when I was hunting. I was probably about 12, 13, 14 years old, somewhere along in there. And this was in the early 80s. And I was out deer hunting with my dad one day. And we had deer hunted that first morning. And then we come back to the truck. He'd had a sandwich and everything. And then everybody went back out and hunted. And I went up on top of this mountain. It was real dry that day. The leaves were really, really dry. And everything. So I went back on top of this mountain, and I sat down on top of the mountain, and I had a 360 view all the way around me. I was on top. I had the high ground. I could see all around me. Anything coming at me, I could see it. And definitely the leaves were so dry that if anything, walked, I could definitely hear it. So I had sat there for probably about a couple of hours, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this rock gets thrown at me and hits the ground. Big, good size rock. I mean, pretty good size.
So were you ground hunting, or were you in a stand?
I was ground. I was just sitting next to a tree. Yes, sir. This was like in the early 80s. I didn't have Sasquatch on the mind at that time. This wasn't on my radar at that particular moment. And I sat there for a little while because it kind of spooked me. I knew, okay, I did not see anybody. I just saw no movement, 360 around me. Didn't hear any leaves rattling, nothing crunching. But this rock gets thrown. So I sat there for a little while longer, because I didn't want to get up right at that moment. And then I got back up and headed toward the truck. But I can't tell you how many times I've thought about that, years after that hunting, and had some other instances happen here and there. Nothing quite that extreme, but this made me think, was it possible? Could it have been possible? Because the Sasquatch hunters, investigators that I do pay attention to, actually it's a thin line of them. I don't go in the vast majority. That usually falls into the criteria of Sasquatch activity. They have rocks thrown, they hear wood knocking, vocalizations, that kind of thing. But the rock thing is a big thing. They don't really, and the rock throwing thing is, in most of the Sasquatch research, I don't think anyone's ever actually been hit with a rock. I think they just do it to either garner attention, like, hey, you've come too far, you need to back off, or hey, I'm here and I'm playing with you. What I'm not really sure.
So the rock that was thrown at you it was a pretty good sized rock, right? It wasn't something like a squirrel could have dropped from a tree.
No. The rock was actually probably just a little bit bigger around than, if you made a fist, it's probably a little bit bigger around than that.
Oh wow.
Yes, sir.
So I'm sure you've probably heard of the missing 411.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, sir. David Politis. Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm. Do you think there's any correlation between Sasquatch and the missing 411?
There again, I think I believe that there could be a definite correlation there. I don't think we could rule out anything there. Do human beings push the envelope? Absolutely. We push that envelope every day in every facet of life. And I think now with our population here growing and cutting down more timber and more of the woodlands becoming housing developments, I think we're definitely encroaching into their territory. And that's I definitely believe that that's a very strong possibility.
Mm-hmm.
That missing hikers, missing hunters can definitely fall into that category. One of the things about Sasquatch research is dogs, or whenever they've ever brought dogs into those situations, but the missing people, the dogs will either refuse to go the direction of where the hunter or whatever was last seen, or if they do, they get to a point and they can't go any further. They won't go any further.
Mm-hmm.
Dogs are smart. I mean, they know they can sense things and that we can't, and that's always been a big thing. I've seen documentaries where Sasquatch researchers have tried to use dogs to track Bigfoot. Well, the dogs don't want no part of it.
Right.
They're like, no, boss, we're done. No, we don't want any part of that. So, and that's happened in the 411 cases, that the dogs either wouldn't track or only get to a certain point, and it's like they just vaporize, they just disappear. But yes, sir, I definitely believe that that's a strong possibility. I see on television everyone says, well, someone will talk about Bigfoot underneath their name. They'll say Bigfoot expert. I don't believe there is such a thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we don't have anybody that's infiltrated the tribe yet.
Right.
I think we're learning. I think we're learning a little bit more about him in some areas, but as far as being an expert, I don't believe that exists until we have one captured, or until somebody takes one out with a gun and puts it on a slab. I don't think we're going to be able to say, okay, well, this is what they do in the fall and this is what they do in the summer, and
mm-hmm.
they travel this way during the spring. We just don't know.
And it's probably going to take that before you actually get people that would come out and say, yeah, that it's real.
Yes, sir.
Because with the advancements in technology, I mean, you can fake any video, you can fake certainly a photograph.
Absolutely.
So it's going to take a body taken to a university and academia saying, yes, this is a Bigfoot or Sasquatch, or it's not human.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. For sure.
Even though they have hair samples and tissue samples of things that they have taken to universities, and they say, well, it's not human.
Exactly. Yes, sir. I've seen that myself, and actually, I've actually talked to some of the Bigfoot researchers that I've watched on YouTube. Contacted them, and they've sent hair samples to different places, and it came back that they couldn't identify the hair sample. But by the mainstream media, that's largely ignored.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to see. You're not going to see CNN or CBS News at 5:30. So okay, well here we have. They're never going to mention that. And I guess until we have a body, they're probably not going to until they have a body. And I can understand that. But absolutely, I mean, when you send in hair samples to a university, and it's been done many times, and this has happened more than once, and they come back and say we can't identify this, you have to raise an eyebrow to that. I mean, we didn't realize that the mountain gorilla existed until 1907.
Mm-hmm.
The new show that's on there that I watch quite a bit, Expedition Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
One of the researchers on there, the female researcher, Marina Mayor, she is a primatologist, and she actually discovered a new form of primate that we did not know existed, that you could hold in the palm of your hand.
Oh,
She
it's
actually
called like
discovered that.
the micro something. I remember
Yes, sir.
seeing that.
Right. That we had no idea existed in this day and age. So, is it possible that Bigfoot exists? Oh, absolutely. Absolutely he could. I do believe that there are populations of, I don't believe they're I don't believe they're out there by the millions,
Mm-hmm.
but I do believe that there's probably a fairly healthy breeding population of them from in all the states, except maybe for Hawaii. And but I mean, absolutely he could exist. I mean, when you start looking back through time, through the last 200 or 300 years, there's reports even then
Mm-hmm.
of them seeing. Actually, there's actually a story that was related by Daniel Boone himself.
I read that on your Facebook page. That was pretty
Exactly.
neat.
Yes, sir. That he actually killed. That him and his brother were out hunting, and he actually killed one, and he didn't know what to call it. He didn't call it a Bigfoot or Sasquatch, but he gave a direct narrative of what happened and everything. And I mean, that's that's very possible that that's exactly what happened.
So if you were a betting man, where would you think in Arkansas would be the best place to find one?
Well, sir, I'll tell you what, probably right now, I think I'm hearing some good stuff come from the Ouachita Mountains. That I think they border there. We have quite a bit of that in Arkansas, and it borders into Oklahoma. That would be I've heard quite a bit of good stuff coming out of there. The North American Wood Ape Conservancy, which they prefer to call it a wood ape instead of Bigfoot, because they think the name Bigfoot's gotten so much press, so they like to call it the wood ape.
Mm-hmm.
They are a very serious group, and they've got quite a few members in their group. And what they actually do is, so many members of their group, they're in a position, I get, where they're either retired or semi-retired, but they have certain members of their group that actually spend 7 days at a time, and they rotate actually in the woods 7 days at a time. And they've gotten some incredible vocalizations, and they're in the Ouachita Mountains, and they keep their locations very secretive as where they actually go and research, which I completely understand that. But if I was going to pick a hot spot, I would definitely pick the Ouachita Mountains. But then there again, I would think that I think they're probably all around. I think if you legitimately got out and I hear reports coming from Missouri, Tennessee, Oklahoma, Louisiana, Florida. One of my good friends was down in Florida earlier this year and had spoken to a game and fish officer in Florida about the subject. He refused to be on camera. He refused to be on tape. He refused to give his name, but he was a working game and fish officer for the state of Florida. And he swore to them on a stack of Bibles that they do exist. But he said he did not want to be identified, because if he did, he could lose his job and his retirement.
Mm-hmm.
Now there we get into another abyss. Why? Why is the federal government so afraid of us knowing this for? There could be a million reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they think we're just not mature enough to handle it. I don't know.
Same thing with the extraterrestrials.
Yes, sir.
ETs. Yeah.
Right.
I remember growing up, one of the most frightening movies I saw, and I grew up on Fangoria magazine. It was the height of the slasher films in the 80s. Jason and Freddy and Slaughterhouse and Phantasm, and all of that. None of that scared me. That was Saturday morning cartoons to me. But I watched The Creature it was based in southern Arkansas.
I'm talking about Boggy Creek.
Boggy Creek, The Legend of Boggy Creek. That's it.
Yes, sir. Uh-huh.
And that movie scared me because it was it was something that could really happen.
Right.
And it was supposedly did happen. and it was somewhere in South Arkansas. I don't remember where, but that movie scared the bejesus out of me. You know, that and Exorcist are really the only two films that ever really frightened me.
Right. Well, actually, that occurred in Falk, Arkansas, around that area, down in Miller County down there. And actually, on YouTube right now is an excellent documentary. They have done a recent documentary. I think it was done within the last couple of years. Seth Breedlove did a documentary about the origins and and about the movie and everything. Did a documentary that told the history of that movie, and actually went to Falk, Arkansas, and talked to actual people who are still alive today that experienced their encounters with the beast down there at that time, back in the late 60s. Some of the ones that were still alive, and actually he found out that people were still having sightings of that today. I don't believe it's one creature. I believe it could be several. You know, maybe kind of like I said, we were talking about earlier. Maybe I think maybe a little population down there. Of course, I don't believe one creature could live that long, but I think it could be several different ones. You know.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, from what I understand, it's still alive down there today. They still have sightings. I know for a fact that one of the I don't remember the name right off, but a gentleman in Falk, Arkansas, was out on his land and saw what he appeared to be a Bigfoot type creature there in that area. It was bent down on one knee and it had a hand. It was by one of his ponds, and then it got up and it ran away. And sometime later, he went and did a plaster cast of where it kneeled down by the pond. And he sent these plaster casts to Dr. Jeff Meldrum. And I actually spoke to Dr. Meldrum about that. He said when he looked at that when the handprint was in the mud, he said he had to raise an eyebrow to that, because when it put its hand down in the mud, I guess to stabilize itself while it was either getting a drink or whatever at the pond.
Mm-hmm.
But when he looked at the handprint that they had done, he said that it was definitely not human. It definitely was not faked, and it had some characteristics to it that could only have been primate type of an origin. He said he doesn't believe that Sasquatch or Bigfoot is a monkey or an orangutan or anything like that. He believes it's its own creature, but it does have tendencies in that area.
Mm-hmm. So it did have an opposable thumb?
Yes, sir. It had, but it was the way it was. It was different than, he said no human could have faked it.
Mm-hmm.
The way he just had to really raise an eyebrow at it. And
what about six fingers? Did it have 6 fingers on that hand?
I believe it had 5. I don't believe it had 6, but it had 5. But something about the way the thumb was and the way the handprint was in there, it just, he said it was definitely he had to raise an eyebrow at that.
Mm-hmm.
And he was very very curious about it, because he's seen the best of the fakes.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, Les Stroud, which he had a great show on there for a long time, Survivor Man. I don't know if you watched the show.
Yeah, I was going to bring him up.
Les Stroud actually spent $10,000 of his own money out of pocket to fake a Bigfoot print for Dr. Meldrum. He made a great one. He made a good one. He actually showcased it in one of his shows. And he took that print to Dr. Jeff Meldrum and could not fool the man. I remember watching that episode and watching that footage, and when he presented the track to him, telling, well, I got this out in the middle of Oregon and blah, 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 blah. Dr. Meldrum looked at it, and you could just tell that, immediately, this doesn't, where did you, he's telling me, and then he really had to fess up a lot. I'm sorry, I tried to trick you. So it was, $10,000 out the window. Yeah, but that just goes to show the expertise of Dr. Meldrum. So if he said the thing in Falk, Arkansas raised an eyebrow, then that's something to look at for sure.
Well, Les Stroud himself encountered Bigfoot. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. I understand. He when he was in Alaska, he didn't actually see it, but he showed the footage. He was camped out next to a water bank there in Alaska, and he was going ahead and making his camp. And I remember him telling about it. He said he kept hearing something off in the woods there as he was building his camp. He kept hearing it. And then a little later on, he said he heard the vocalizations from it. And he's, of course, Les Stroud, he knows the difference between a wolf, coyote, or a bear.
Mm-hmm.
He definitely knows the difference between it. He said what he had heard, the vocalizations he heard, he had never heard it before in his life. Never. And when it did take off through the woods, it was like a freight train. But he said that what it sounded like he'd never heard before. He'd never heard any animal make that, ever make that kind of vocalization.
So when the sounds that they make, are they more of a primate sound, or is it more of a guttural sound, more like a bear?
They can vary, but they can. The one thing is usually when they vocalize, they'll have a long, drawn out. It can be very long, drawn out, like a roar or growl,
mm-hmm.
and can be really guttural. Which coyotes, wolves, most of your North American animals, when they do make a sound, it's not long or drawn out. It can be just, they'll make multiple sounds, but it's not long and drawn out.
Mm-hmm.
This one was long and drawn out, and of course I've heard some vocalizations even taken here in Arkansas by Mr. Robert Swain that'll curl your hair. Mr. Swain he runs a Bigfoot research group here in Arkansas, and he actually got some vocalizations that, man, if I was camping, I believe I'd have been getting my stuff packed up and getting to the truck. I never heard anything like that. And if you ever get a chance, there's a site called the Sierra Sounds. I'm not sure if you ever heard those, but they were actually recorded by Ron Moorhead in 1971 by one of the old cassette recorders back then. They didn't have the digital recorders back then, of course. But this was actually in California in the Sierra Mountains. They had a hunting place up there. They didn't have a cabin up there at all, but they hiked. I mean, it was a horrible hike. It must have been several hours. Even I think they used horses to get back there to it. But when they got back there, they recorded some sounds. And there was actually multiple Bigfoots there at that scene. The recordings was taken at night. All the hunters had their guns and rifles and everything, but they were huddled around the fire, scared to death. And they recorded multiple Bigfoots. You just have to get on there and listen to it. It's called the Sierra Sounds if you ever get a chance, and it's really chilling. It almost sounds like they're talking to each other. When Mr. Moorhead actually took the vocalizations, his cassette, to a university and had a speech expert listen to this, after he listened to it, he said that no human could have done that. He said there's no way that a human had the capacity, the vocal capacity, to do that. And but if you get a chance, it's called the Sierra Sounds, and many of the people that I've talked to, even today, some of the Bigfoot researchers said they have heard that in their research. I've heard several say they have actually heard that very thing here, Missouri, Oklahoma, Arkansas, that kind of vocalization. It's actually like them talking to each other. It's more, not exactly a vocalization, but it was. Mr. Moorhead believed that they were very angry about them being in that area, and when you listen to the sound, you can pretty much believe it.
Were they camped out inside of a hollowed out tree?
Yeah.
Okay,
that's
I think
right.
I did hear that.
The hollowed tree. That's right. Yes, sir. Yeah. And that's about all they had.
Mm-hmm.
But they all got inside the hollowed tree and kind of put a barrier up there and just kind of hunkered down all night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would have probably I've done the same thing.
Yeah.
Or left.
Yes, sir.
In the paranormal research that you do, you have tools that you use like the EMF meters and IR readers and the Enigma machine and all these things. What are some of the tools of the trade to let's say you're somebody in Arkansas here in the Ouachitas and you think that you may have a Bigfoot on your property? What are some tools that you could use or some methods you could use to kind of flesh that out or confirm it?
Well, sir, yeah, definitely. I would definitely bring like you just mentioned, the EMF detector. I don't have any right now, but I want to invest in some night vision, definitely some night vision equipment.
Mm-hmm.
When we do get to the point where we get out there and try to investigate. I believe, I've heard people say, well, Bigfoot's nocturnal. Well, he's seen during the daytime and he's seen during the night, both. You can go either way. I think primarily at night, but night vision would definitely be one of the tools that I would want first and foremost out there. Definitely to bring the EMF detector. I have another thing that I'm going to be using, I think, when we finally do this. I bought a game caller with a remote control.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my plans is to download the Sierra sounds on a memory card and to put that into my game caller. And then I'll be able to put my game caller, like say, up on a big rock or something like that, and then get back quite a few ways, and then have, where the actual, I can play the Sierra sounds at one point and then we'll be back over here.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not one of those people who believe that we can walk up on a Sasquatch or that we can out stealth a Sasquatch. I think once we drive the truck up there and slam the door, we're made.
Mm-hmm.
It's over with. There's no need to camo out. There's no need to get a ghillie suit. I mean, this is, we're talking about a complete expert in the woods that has the stealth down in spades. And so we might as well go ahead and strike up the fire at the camp and,
Mm-hmm.
let
Right.
him come to us. Exactly.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. The best you could do would to make him think that there were some others like him close, or maybe those were distress calls or something, and he would come investigate.
I did hear one gentleman, he was being interviewed, and he said that he actually did play the Sierra sounds on his game caller during his research, and he refused to talk about the results. All he said he would. I died. I was like, why are you on this documentary if you're not going to tell?
Right.
and he said he did not want to talk about it. He did not want to discuss it, but he had actually played the Sierra sounds on his game caller, and that he would never do it again. And that's all he wanted to say. And I was, oh my goodness. But now I've got to. I mean,
Yeah, that's
I just, I want, if Bigfoot exists, I want my chain rattled.
right.
I want to see it. I know we may go 100 times and maybe it'd be the 101st one we have something happen.
Mm-hmm.
That's the same way in the paranormal. You can go investigate 10 houses and 3 out of the 10, maybe, you'll get some really good activity.
Mm-hmm.
But in the Bigfoot realm, definitely, I just want to get out there and at some point, not right now with the woods full of deer hunters,
Right.
but get them kind of get their thing kind of out of the way. But yeah, definitely trying to think outside the box on what. They're used to the tree knocks. They're used to they're used to people trying to. I'm definitely trying to mimic the vocalizations, but I'm always constantly trying to think of something outside the box that maybe they're not. That would attract them that nobody's thought about.
Mm-hmm.
Playing flute music or
Mm-hmm.
a baby crying or something. Just constantly looking for what could be that trigger that no one's thought about before.
So, for those that are listening that don't know what we're talking about with tree knocks, could you explain kind of what the tree knocks and what the research up to this point has birthed as far as characteristics of Sasquatch?
Yes, sir. The tree knocks are, and most all the Bigfoot investigators do this. They will take a baseball bat or a piece of wood or something, and they'll at night or during the day or whatever, and they'll knock several times on a tree out there, and then many of them get responses. It could be, they've recorded them. I mean, you could hear this thing like 2-3 miles away or a mile away or maybe 500 feet, but they'll get responses from their tree knocks, or they'll have rocks thrown after they do the tree knocks. But from what I understand, that's also a characteristic of primates, chimpanzees, I understand, and even gorillas do that for some reason. Mm-hmm. If it's a form of communication or whatever. But many of the serious Bigfoot researchers have definitely gotten responses. They've gotten tree knocks in return when they've done that. And of course, they also do whooping, whoop through the woods like that. And then you will hear a whoop back. Many of them will, or they'll hear whistles that definitely are not birds. That kind of thing. So, I think the game caller, if anyone was going to go out there and do it themselves, I think a game caller would be great.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, if they could download what they consider to be some serious Bigfoot vocalizations and try it out. I'm definitely going to try the Sierra sound, see how that does, or even have some wood knocks on there and see if that works.
I was just going to ask, what would be a way to that would be a red flag for you to know that somebody was just spinning a yarn and they were, just a fake or whatever? What are some of the if somebody were to come up to you and say, "Yeah, I saw Bigfoot, and we had grilled cheese together," whatever. What what is a red flag to you, or some red flags that indicate that somebody's not telling the truth when it comes to Sasquatch?
That's a good question. I would say, I would probably ask him, well, what was he doing? Where did you see it? And what happened afterwards? I do believe that a good quantity, and I'm not saying out of 100 people, I'd say that there is definitely a percentage of people who are seeing bear, no doubt about it.
Mm-hmm.
A bear can stand up on two legs. He can walk a short distance on two legs. He'll scratch his back on a big tree, and I'm sure standing up, a bear would look at a great distance, probably like a Sasquatch. I would have to just have them tell me what they saw and how it behaved. If someone told me, okay, I saw a Bigfoot and he was staring right at me, he was behind a tree and he went from side to side, or he scrouched down or something like that, then I would tend to more or less believe that, because I've heard that many, many times that they will be behind a tree. They'll lower themselves down. They will do that type of behavior. A bear will usually just go ahead and run off. If it's a black bear, if it's a grizzly, he's not going to. The grizzly's going to take you out,
right.
More than likely. But most in some of the very serious, and I mean very serious Bigfoot researchers that I've talked to quite often, they have gotten photographs that they didn't even know at the time that they had gotten until they reviewed their camera footage later on. And when they reviewed it, then they would see something on there. And usually it's pretty grainy, or you'd have to zoom it in to see. And that's the kind of thing I put more stock in.
Mm-hmm.
When somebody brings in something and say, well, I didn't notice this till 3 days later, and let me zoom this in and show you what I've got here. Rather than the guy who says, well, here's a picture of Bigfoot right here, and you don't have to zoom it in. It's crystal clear, and all that type of thing.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting that a lot of times tends to be the case with the paranormal as well.
Yes, sir.
Exactly. You won't see the whatever it is until you go to review the film footage.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. Many, I can't tell, countless times that's happened to us, that we would have captured something on our film or recorder, and it might be 3 days later I'll discover it. It's, oh my gosh, what is that? And never saw it at the time, never had any idea. But the very serious Bigfoot researchers that are out there in the field every day or every time they can, they get something on their cameras that they'll won't discover for several days and then look at it. This thing was looking at them the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they walked right past it. And I've had them tell me, I was within 20 feet of this thing and never knew it. I didn't know this was on my phone or my camera for like 3 days later. I mean, literally the thing was watching them the whole time. That's like I said, once you park the truck, slam the door, you're done.
Mm-hmm.
You're made.
Yeah, they know you're there.
Exactly.
I've recently saw a series of videos with a guy who bought some land. I don't know where it was, somewhere in the U.S. And it was just land out in the middle of nowhere. He used like an easement to even gain access to it.
Mm-hmm.
And he forgot something of an item of his personal property. I don't remember what it was. If it was a pocket knife or whatever. on a rock. It was right at the edge of on a tree line.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he remembered that he left it. He came back to retrieve it, and it was gone, but there was something in its place. It was like a branch that was twisted up into a
Mm-hmm.
weird configuration. It was like it traded with him. So he took that, and now he does this every time he goes there. He'll bring something to it, like something to eat, like a snack cake or something, and it will leave something. And it left some of the things it left were some weird looking rocks that probably it found in the stream that looked, like amethyst or some. I don't know if it was a precious stone or whatever, but this has been going on now for a month. He doesn't know if it's Bigfoot or fairies or whatever it is. He hasn't seen what it is, but he will not go past a certain point. There's off into the wood line there. He brought a friend, to show to it because he doesn't want to. I guess he's trying to get it to trust him enough that he can actually get a photograph of whatever it is.
Right. Yeah, I've heard that many times. People set up a gifting area.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a stone. They would leave something, and maybe like a stone or a twisted. They would make something out of like a branch or something. They'd twist it a certain way and everything, and leave that there. I mean, you definitely know that a raccoon and a squirrel or a bear is not going to do that,
right?
By no means. And I've heard that many times.
And if it were a squirrel or a bear or something, they would just demolish the snack cake and leave the package everywhere. But everything's gone, and something's always left.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. Yeah, that's something. I mean, it shows a level of intelligence, for sure. And like I said, even in the stealth area, I mean, I believe thoroughly that they know exactly when we enter the forest. They know exactly where we are. We're not going to walk up on them. I believe that we would probably walk right past them and never know it.
That begs an interesting question. If you were to say you used your game caller and the Bigfoot came up and you actually got footage of one and it expressed to you somehow that it didn't want to be known and it was, you had a trust there.
Mm-hmm.
Would you tell, be the most famous person and release the footage, or would you continue to visit the Bigfoot or see how far you could go? Maybe you could go back to, like you said, maybe there are a tribe of them or a herd or what, I don't know how they would, what their social hierarchy is or whatever, but
I would probably go ahead and hold on to the footage and continue my research, because all the footage in the world isn't going to convince the naysayers or the skeptics.
Mm-hmm.
All the best footage in the world won't do it. It won't be until the body's put on a slab, and Nora O'Donnell on the 5:30 News was going to, CBS News is going to say, okay, now we have conclusive evidence of a Sasquatch. Until that happens, I'd say, I would definitely keep my footage and just probably go ahead and continue my research for a great many years until, at some point, go ahead and release it, I'm sure. But as for now, like you said, if I had captured some really good, serious footage, I would just continue to research and just see how much I could learn and how close I could get. And that would probably take, monumental years to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But then you never, but then you never know. I mean, I guess it would just depend on the individual Bigfoot or the individual, right.
If it was, if it meant you harm, or if it was, kind of nice or somewhat tame.
Yes, sir. I've spoken to Bigfoot researchers who, some of them carry firearms with them every time they go, and some don't. The ones who don't, they have said that for some reason they know, and I don't know how they would. I mean, I'm sure that they know this. How they would know what it is, I'm not sure. But I've heard some researchers say that they don't carry firearms because when they did take firearms, they had less activity.
That makes sense.
And then the other ones who, they said when they would leave leave it at home or whatever, then they would have, like I said, they would have less activity when they would bring firearms. But if they brought them, then nothing would happen. Which that's intriguing. I mean, you know, how would I'm sure that they've been shot at, so maybe they do know what firearms are. I mean, it's hard to say. Myself, I will carry one every time. I would carry one every time. I don't think that anything can happen out there. I mean, anything apart from, we're living in a very dangerous age right now. I mean, I don't think, you know, who knows what Bigfoot might want to do? Who knows what, not every Bigfoot might want to kill you, but you might run into that one, the old man who's like, I'm fed up with these people out here and I'm going to put a stop to it today. And of course, you just never know who, human wise, what you're going to run into out there. So I'm very proactive on, you know, going ahead and preparing for the situation and being ready to roll, just either way. But, you know, I've also heard I've had people ask me, well, would you set up if you were going to pitch camp, would you run a fire or not? Well, I've heard the pros as a two-edged sword. I've heard people say that when they did that, who did a cold camp, that they got more activity. Then I've heard people who say, well, we went ahead and built a fire and sat around it and we got as much activity as we ever did. So I guess we go either way. You know, I think the more vulnerable you make yourself, and I'm not talking, I think everybody should be armed when they go to the woods, because anything can happen. Right. You could run into anybody. But I think the more vulnerable, the more open you are, just go out, set up a campfire, sit around it. That way they know where you're at. Of course, they're going to know where you're at anyway, but I'm saying, you know, go ahead and just make yourself vulnerable, sit out there. And I you know, I've heard both sides of the coin. So if me and my team, when it comes to the point where me and my team go out there and do it, we're going to set up a camp, sit around and do wood knocks, sit out the vocal, you know, definitely let them know. I mean, they're definitely going to know where they are already from the first truck door slams. So just go ahead and go with it.
So is there a way of knowing where in the wilderness to look? I mean, are there signs that you can see to, you know, how you track a deer, you see scrapes and you see trails and things like that? Is there a way to do that? If, let's say, you wanted to start a Bigfoot researching club and you would all go out on the weekends, would you just set up a map and try to quadrant it off and search every area, or would you try to follow some signs?
I guess the first thing I would do is, and I'm sure you've seen this too, the tree structures that they find. You know, when I was hunting all those years, I never paid attention to that. I wished I had, you know. I'm sure that I ran across numerous tree structures at the time that I just thought that's the way the tree fells, the way the trees fell. But when you really start looking at these things, you can start seeing that, well, this tree came from over here, this tree came from over here. One of these have been uprooted and shoved into the ground, you know, and it's quite heavy, you know.
And it's surrounded by trees.
Exactly. So I would probably start looking for stuff like that first, tree structures. And then I've been told by the serious Bigfoot researchers that anywhere you have deer or bear, you'll find Sasquatch. That they pretty much eat everything that a deer or a bear would eat, and they believe that Sasquatch actually do hunt deer or ambush them. So I would probably anywhere that I would see a lot of deer activity, or an area where I know black bear inhabit, I would probably just go ahead and look for that area. One of the areas that I do want to try first is up around the Blanchard Springs area, up in that area, because that's I believe that's 79,000 acres of primo forest up there, beautiful forest up there. And that, to me, that just looks like a great place to start. I haven't really heard of any reports coming out of there, but there again, I mean, I think anywhere you could go off into the woods where there are deer or bear activity, I believe it'd be a good place to start. And just kind of go into there and just do your own scouting. If you started seeing tree structures, or even just found a few, that would be a good start.
Where do you go from here? Or do you plan to start a separate organization specifically for Bigfoot, or is it just going to be a branch from Off The Chain Paranormal?
Probably just a branch from Off The Chain Paranormal, yes, sir. My team members are very interested in it, and would definitely want to. This is to us a new frontier. that we've always been fascinated with, but we haven't actually spent any boot time on this. I mean, we have files and files and files of where we've proven to ourselves the existence of paranormal without a doubt, just to ourselves, you know. But the Bigfoot thing is something, and it's a new frontier that we want to get into, and definitely try some new things there, some stuff maybe that hadn't been tried. That's one of the reasons we call ourselves Off the Chain Paranormal, because we want to think outside the box, think of new areas, new ways to approach either the paranormal and definitely approach Bigfoot, and go that route. And yeah, like I said, probably like I said, just to branch off Chain Paranormal, a new avenue, a new direction for us to travel for a little bit. And like I said, probably I would say that our first location would be probably up around the Adventures. I think would just be a good area up there. Lots of hills, lots of mountaintops that, you know, I think that they could thrive in. Not that I haven't gotten a lot of reports out there, but it would just be a good place to try right out. It's not that far from, probably an hour's drive from where I'm at now, which wouldn't be too bad.
Do you plan on researching other cryptids or just specifically Bigfoot?
Yes, sir. Probably just Bigfoot. I'm not saying that there isn't some credence in some of the other cryptids, but he seems to be holding the spotlight right now, for sure. And I mean, I've known here recently. We lost a dear member of the Bigfoot community. I was if you get on YouTube, there's a podcast on there called Bigfoot Odyssey. And the founder of that was a man by the name of Kerry Arnold. And unfortunately, in September, he was killed in a car crash. It was a horrible deal. He is sorely missed. And I spoke to him many times on this subject. And the reason he formed Bigfoot Odyssey was because in 2000, I hope I got the year right. I want to say 2013, he was out turkey hunting. And he had an encounter with a Bigfoot. He never thought about Bigfoot before, never believed in it. He was a skeptic. It was not on his radar, but the encounter scared him so bad that he did not even enter the woods for over 10 years after that. I'm sorry, for 7 years. I'm sorry, let me back it up. He didn't enter the woods for over 7 years after that encounter. Matter of fact, he ran back to his four-wheeler that he had packed, or he had up the road there. He left most of his hunting utensils, his backpack, and all that stuff behind, and got to his four-wheeler, got to his truck, and took off home. I'd heard his encounter many times, and if you get on YouTube and type in Bigfoot Odyssey, the podcast, you can hear his encounter. But it rocked his world. And then he formed Bigfoot Odyssey to learn more about it and to hear more people's encounter. And it was just, if you ever get a chance to listen, it was an incredible story. And he was 6'4". This is a big guy. This guy could take care of business. He was 6'4", very athletic, and it rung his bell. He never even entered the woods he gave up hunting after that. But then he started getting back into the research, but he would definitely go with other people, wouldn't go solo. But that's the thing there. I've heard of people, and I'm not talking about the vast majority. I'm very selective who I listen to, but the ones that I'm very serious about listening to, when they tell about their first encounter, I mean, they'll almost sit down and cry. It scared them so bad. It affected them so deeply that they didn't realize when they first saw it, they said they couldn't realize what they were seeing, that this is something that's not supposed to exist. You can't unsee it. And that's one thing they say, you can't unsee it once you see it, and your mind just can't wrap around it. And one guy said that he even had it in when he was hunting, and actually had it in his scope, had the crosshairs on it. But he was so afraid that it was a human in a costume that he couldn't pull the trigger.
Wow.
Yeah. And so you have that area, but like I said, I want to throw my hat out in the ring, and definitely, I know I'm asking for, I should probably asking for something I shouldn't be asking for, but I definitely want to get my bell rung and get my chain yanked on this, And
we definitely look forward to following you along that journey, Alan. We, I know, me and my household, we're fans of your work, and like I said, with the integrity that goes along with your investigations, we will definitely be tuning in.
Well, thank you so much. When we do plan on this, we're going to plan it on a time where we know that we're more than likely going to be the only people in that area. It's only going to be a time where we know there won't be anybody possibly in that area. We're going to try to research and make sure that we're not going to be anywhere that anybody could, even by accident, could even try to fake us out or play with us or anything like that. We're going to, try to eliminate all of that as much as possible. Or we, almost say that we were just dead on the only people out there.
Well, Alan, I've kept you for over an hour now. I do.
It's been great.
Do want to be mindful of your time, and I really appreciate you coming on. It's always a pleasure to hear somebody that takes things that are not taken so seriously, very seriously. If you catch my drift.
Absolutely, yes, sir. And thank you so much for having me on. It was a pleasure. It was just a blast to be on your show. And just anytime you want to redo it after next year or something, let's holler at me. We can see where we are at that point and maybe have some new stuff to bring to you.
Awesome. Sounds great. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for having me. It was a wonderful, wonderful experience.